Hollywood? Was it a happy time for you, or?
Yes, it is. It's a very happy time. I'm happy to be back. As I said, it's my hometown.
Yes.
Marilyn Monroe's life was filled with ups and downs, sad and enigmatic incidents. We will also attempt to identify this remarkable woman today. The future celebrity was born in Los Angeles on June 1st, 1926. Marilyn Monroe was a pen name, but not everyone is aware of this. Norma Jean Mortensen was her true name. The girl owed her name to Jean Harlow and Norma Talmadge, two well-known Hollywood stars. Gladys Pearl Baker, her mother, was a cinema negative cutter and assistant editor. Gladys's second husband, Martin Mortensen, was listed as her father on her birth certificate, but she had already broken up with him before learning of the pregnancy. Later, Norma's mother named another paternity variant Constantly. She said the girl was the daughter of Consolidated Studios employee Charles Stanley Gifford, with whom she had a brief affair. The definitive confirmation of her statements came in April 2022. While filming the documentary Marilyn, Her Final Secret, a DNA test was conducted. The claim was supported by a saliva sample from Charles Stanley Gifford's great-grandchild and a lock of Monroe's hair that was purchased from an auctioneer. It is hard to say that Gladys Baker was a decent mother. After gaining full custody, her husband took her 2 children from her first marriage. Additionally, not much has changed with her third child. She didn't want to spend her entire life on diapers and rattles because she loved parties. Furthermore, her mother, who was far from perfect, suggested that she give the kid to someone else. At the age of 2 weeks, the lady thus promptly gave up her daughter and placed her in the custody of a foster family who had a family-style orphanage. In those days, it was standard procedure. The girl was raised with strong moral values by the deeply religious parents of Ida and Albert Ballender. There was no entertainment allowed in the house. For instance, they believed that movies were a devilish temptation. As a bonus, the couple was certain that moviegoers would get a ticket to the first place in hell. As you can see, I was raised differently than the typical American child, who is raised with the expectation that they will be happy. We cannot, however, claim that Gladys left the child entirely. She saw her daughter on weekends and paid for the girl's upkeep in full. For Norma, spending those few hours each week with her mother was a welcome change. Unlike Aunt Ida, who was poignantly frigid, Gladys at least accepted the title of mother. However, the youngster experienced dissonance because the mother's behavior and way of life differed greatly from what Norma had been taught at the foster home. The Ballanders permitted the lone girl to keep Tippy, a stray dog, as a buddy. However, the joy did not last long. Tippy was shot by a neighbor when Norma turned 7 because the dog frequently growled excessively. For days, poor Norma wept. Gladys brought her daughter to live with her shortly after. But don't jump for joy just yet, because the cause wasn't even a resuscitation of the maternal instinct. She was able to obtain a loan for a home close to the Hollywood Bowl since she had a small child, but she had to raise her daughter on her own for that. After moving into a new home with Norma, the woman also invited a few actors to help her out financially. The child initially found it challenging to adjust to the new lifestyle. The people around Norma had a different perspective on the world than her former masters. Gladys and her visitors adored film, even if the Ballanders prohibited it outright. She was shown a picture of a man she named her real father by her mother one day. The same Charles Stanley Gifford was involved. The girl was soon labeled a lagging student at school. It was believed in her family that everyone would eventually lose their mind. Gladys dreaded inheriting that affliction, and her fear was so intense that she slowly started to retreat inward. She also had a nervous breakdown in 1934 as a result of challenging life conditions. When 8-year-old Norma saw her mother kicking and screaming uncontrollably one day, she called the police. After being brought to a mental health facility, the woman was given a paranoid schizophrenia diagnosis. Norma was homeless and unprotected once more. The upshot was a lack of constant affection and care, distrust, and a fear of the outside world. Other than teaching me about the fundamental needs of the young, the ill, and the weak, there were no advantages. I have a lot of sympathy for everyone who is oppressed worldwide. Gladys's best friend, Grace McKee, with whom Norma had worked at the film studio, acquired custody of the kid after threatening to place her in an orphanage. After falling in love, the mother began to treat the girl as if she were her own kid. Norma's youthful mind was shaped by Grace to believe that she might pursue a career in acting. Therefore, it is untrue that Monroe's career as an actor happened by chance. The woman never got tired of saying how gorgeous she was, and continued to buy her lovely outfit. Like her friend, Grace introduced Norma to filmmaking by taking her to movies and her job. She was introduced to the exciting world of film by Grace. In contrast to Norma, everyone was content, loved, and wealthy there. Regretfully, the girl's adventures continued. Irwin Goddard, whom Grace shortly married, brought a daughter from his previous marriage into the home. Irwin started trying to convince his wife to give her stepdaughter to an orphanage because the family was severely short on funds. After all, she wasn't her daughter. He was still able to persist on his own after another argument. Grace continued to visit Norma every Saturday, even after reluctantly taking to the orphanage. Norma's mental state was significantly impacted by loneliness, the mockery of other kids from complete homes, and further adult betrayal. Spending all of her pocket money on movie tickets, a lonely orphan girl with a surviving mother became more and more engrossed in fantasies about the fantastical world of cinema. In order to get me out of the house, some foster family used to bring me to the movies. I liked spending all day and all night sitting up front with the screen so large, feeling like a tiny child by myself. Undoubtedly, Norma was already dreaming of being on the opposite side of the magic screen, startling and thrilling the audience. It will happen eventually, since we haven't reached this stage yet. Norma Jean discovered she had an older half-sister named Bernice when she was 12 years old. Excited by that revelation, the girl started writing to her sister, forming a bond that would endure until Monroe's final days. Norma found herself in a challenging circumstance when she turned 15. Grace and her spouse had to relocate to a different state because she was no longer able to be supported by her guardian. Norma married James Daughtry, her neighbor, whom she had been seeing for a while, in order to avoid going back to the orphanage. Despite being 5 years her senior and extremely good-looking, there was no indication that they were deeply in love. Marilyn noted in her diary, "He was one of the few young men I had no sexual repulsion for, and I was greatly attracted to him. Additionally, I have a false sense of security since I believe he possesses more overwhelming attributes than I did." On paper, it all seems incredibly logical, but the covert midnight meeting, the sly glances stolen in other people's presence, the sharing of the ocean, moon, and stars, and the sense of loneliness made it a romantic adventure that a shy young girl who didn't always give that impression because she wanted to fit in and grow can thrive on. The girl rose to fame as a model. Within 6 months, Norma's photos were featured in over 30 periodicals. Marilyn Monroe was in complete control during photo sessions, according to photographer Eve Arnold, who would go on to snap many of her well-known images. Everything was manipulated by her. I am the camera. She was quite knowledgeable with cameras, and I had never encountered someone who could elicit such a response from them. Norma Jean hasn't been blonde since birth, as you may have noticed. Because blondes were more likely to receive job offers, the agents convinced the girl to tint her hair a brighter shade. She complied. She was prepared to put her all into pursuing her dream. Before deciding on her characteristic hair color, the girl would experiment with 12 various colors of gold over the course of the following few years. However, she felt that the model's efforts were insufficient. Norma continued to dream about a movie. Norma was selected after the agency gave her a screen test at 20th Century Fox in 1946. The girl was offered a contract by the studio. Whether she starred in a movie, she was expected to get $75 a week. Ben Lyon, the chief of the studio casting department, called Norma to discuss the deal before she signed it. "Norma Jean Mortensen is not a name for a movie star," he said. Choosing a last name didn't take long. Consequently, the couple were divorced in 1946. She apparently got her ticket to the major leagues. It was far from major roles and fame, though. She played just 2 supporting parts for the duration of her contract. By the way, something unexpected occurred during the filming. A pretty girl who had always wanted to be an actor turned out to be terrified of a movie camera. The idea of doing something incorrectly appalled her. Even after Marilyn rose to fame and gained expertise as an actor, she would still be plagued by that issue. She continued to study diligently and not squander time when there was no work.
Marilyn worked as an actress 3 hours a day. She then ate lunch. She then attended dance courses for an hour, vocals for an hour, and fencing for an additional hour. She wasn't professional enough for serious filmmaking, and she wasn't pretty enough for consumer movies, Zanuck said. Marilyn's contract expired in 1947, and the studio had no intention of extending it. Subsequently, she became aware of the industry's rigidity. The number of young, attractive girls was enormous. Despite her depression, Marilyn refused to give up. For a short while, she resumed her career as a fashion model, but she was constantly thinking about ways to go back into the movie business. Monroe then had to fulfill the expectation placed on all young, attractive actresses hoping to land a role. Anyone who could let her into the movie theater must be her bed partner. God, I really wanted to improve, grow, and learn. There was nothing else I wanted. I didn't require love, money, or men, just the capacity to play. There were parties in Hollywood at the time where a lot of powerful people from the industry came. There were also pretty young girls. Many of them looked for connections in order to enter the big screen movie industry. Marilyn would later read an essay from a magazine titled "The Wolves I Have Known" after she had already achieved fame. She would denounce sexual harassment, which was common in Hollywood at the time. In it, it would also foreshadow the Me Too campaign, as few of the women who experienced harassment from Hollywood leaders publicly acknowledged it. There are many types of wolves, Marilyn wrote. Some are sinister, others are just good-timed. Others create a game out of Charlie's attempt to obtain something for free. Marilyn was mobbed by men one evening when one of them reached out and tore off her top, exposing her breasts. According to Orson Welles, Wells claimed that Marilyn laughed at that humiliation with the others. Her anger was concealed by laughter. She was a straightforward and active young lady. She was a bike rider once. She was a good girl who was destroyed by the movie industry. She spread her legs as a result. All young actresses were viewed as prospective and acceptable targets by guys at the time. Even though it traumatized her, Marilyn accepted the necessity of having sex with males as a given. Marilyn was straightforward and admitted, "Yes, I had sex with the producers. Everybody did it. Another female is waiting outside the door who will do it if you don't." Eventually, she used her femininity as a weapon to challenge male-made laws and as a tool to accomplish her aims. As long as I can be a woman in a world dominated by men, I don't mind living there. Marilyn's well-known statement encapsulated her feelings toward her sexuality and femininity. Her hunt for a sponsor soon started to pay off. Marilyn became the mistress of producer Joseph Schenck after meeting him at one of the Hollywood parties. He was already 70 years old at the time. Marilyn lived at Schenck's guest house and was always going to events with him. Since Schenck frequently donated Monroe to his wealthy and powerful friends at parties, it was challenging to identify him as the owner. None of them, though, desired to assist her in establishing a career. She didn't stick out to them among the other attractive celebrities who were willing to do everything to secure a studio contract. Her potential has not yet been recognized. Marilyn once attempted to speak with renowned filmmaker Howard Hawks, but he dismissed her as a common idiot and showed no interest in her. Even the offer of closeness was turned down by him. Was it then possible for Hawks to have envisioned her as the lead in his movie in a few years? Schenck finally assisted his mistress. Marilyn Monroe and Columbia Pictures inked a 6-month contract in 1948. Then her appearance changed on a regular basis. Electrolysis helped make her hair voluminous, and the platinum shade was applied to her blonde hair. On 22 films over the course of 6 years, the actress learned how to work in front of the camera from Natasha, who also helped shape her behavior. Monroe's situation deteriorated so much in 1949 that her automobile was seized and she was behind on her rent. It was then that the girl met Tom Kelly, the photographer, by chance. He promised her $50 in exchange for her taking part in a photo session. There was a catch, though. Marilyn was forced to pose nude. It was a daring suggestion. The subject of sex was taboo at the time. The Hays Code, enforced by the film business, prohibited any suggestion of closeness during filming. Celebrities may face numerous issues as a result of such images. However, after 2 days of consideration, Marilyn decided that $50 was money. She spent around 2 hours posing on red velvet until she abruptly forgot everything. She began modeling in the 1940s, catching the eye of 20th Century Fox. By the early 50s, she was captivating audiences with her beauty, charm, and comedic talent in films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, and The 7-Year Itch, where her famous white dress scene became pop culture legend. But behind the glamorous image, Marilyn battled deep personal struggles with fame, mental health, and tumultuous relationships. She married 3 times, most famously to baseball legend Joe DiMaggio and playwright Arthur Miller. Despite her success, Monroe often felt underestimated, longing to be taken seriously as an actress. She studied method acting and earned praise for her dramatic work in Bus Stop and The Misfits. On August 5, 1962, at just 36 years old, Marilyn Monroe died of a drug overdose, a tragic end that only deepened her legend. Her life remains a symbol of Hollywood's golden age, a blend of beauty, vulnerability, and enduring mystery. She wasn't just a blonde bombshell, she was a woman who shaped pop culture and left a lasting mark on the world.